Right. Man, how's your week, Nate? It's kind of a interesting week.
Busy,
Yeah,
busy, busy, busy.
yeah,
I'm
same
looking
here.
forward to the weekend.
Yeah, me too. There's a lot. It's I'm running more servers than ever now, and it's just like it's cool to build and ship projects, but running a server, it's like cool for the first week, and then you're like, "Oh, this actually sucks. I'm tired of this." Like checking
Yeah, I
logs
mean,
every day.
I used to have two at home. I decommissioned one of them recently, so now I only have one, uh, like custom full. So I used to have three Bitcoin full nodes running at home. Now I have two. My
Yeah.
Start 9 and like my test machine. Uh, Not really test machine. I use it for everything. But yeah, I've got this Raspberry Pi now that I don't know what to do with.
Is it a
Seems like
Raspberry Pi 4?
yeah,
8 gig?
yeah. I don't know. It's kind of old now. Um, I don't know. I think it was one of the good ones,
Yeah. I
but
don't know if I've just had bad luck, but I've had a lot of trouble running even like with Umbrel or even Start 9. I don't download every app. Like I'm just like
oh
Bitcoin node, Lightning node.
yeah,
And the, I don't know if it's also like I'm in apartments in Austin or something like that, but the initial block download always for any of my Raspberry Pis has been weeks.
probably takes a long time, even for me. Um,
Yeah. And then it just shuts off all the
if the
time
hardware is
randomly.
better, it's usually better
Yeah.
in my experience, anyway.
But, that's why I run my node on voltage now.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Don't have to worry about that. Cool. So I did a little bit of cleaning up here before we got started just to make things a little more readable. And I'm going to pull up my local host. I'm going to pull up the repo. Voltage tipper.
Turn on the Zapstream chat for fun here.
Yeah, can I throw a comment in here? Open chat. Template. Sweet. All right, so let's run this in PM Run Dev. Let's go through a quick overview of what we have so far. And what I want to get to today is LNURL, Lightning address, and maybe past transactions, and maybe on chain. Those are some interesting things that I would want in my tipping page. Running here. Cool. Maybe a little wide, but I always have my console open. That's why it doesn't seem wide. So this is where we got to last time. So we basically have a form here. At the top level, we start in index.js. And here we are pulling in, we have a read macaroon. We have a host. So this host is where our Lightning node is at, and then our macaroon gives us permissions. At the top level here, we're just calling get info to get all our nodes info, and we're setting it into this piece of state right here. And if we have the alias, we kind of just display the alias and say this is, aliases. I could probably do this. Oops. Can I do that? Pleb devs tipping page. Can be escaped within a pos. I need to do that. In a pos. And an S. Okay, there we go. So alias is tipping page. So this is just our first example method at the top level. getting our node info. And then we go down to the tipping component. And this is kind of what I worked on and broke apart. So now we have a tipping component, we have a tipping display, and we have a tipping form. And this is just kind of to separate things out. So starting at the tipping component, let's actually show you what it looks like first. So put in an amount of 12 sats. I can put in a memo. Hey, Os. We submit, and we get a QR code here with an invoice. I updated, we built a timer last time, and it actually was really difficult to do this very basic programming thing. Funny how that happens, but we had this timer. It was set to like 60 seconds or something like that, but I updated it to be an hour and formatted it to be an hour, and our invoice expires in an hour. So I can click on the QR code and copy it, and of course, scan it. And we should be able to send ourselves a payment on mainnet, and then get a little toast. Yep. And so we're polling and we're listening for that payment to be done. Great. So that's kind of the basic flow that's in place right now. So let's look into the tipping component. A lot of what's confusing in this component is actually just this timer and the polling and formatting the time, all of that fun stuff that ChatGPT is really good at, but us humans, we always forget every time we need to redo it. But in our tipping component, we have state here for the invoice that is essentially going to be set for the user to pay us. And then we're going to have a listen timer. And we have 3,600 here. I think that's 3,600 seconds, I think. So that's an hour. Sounds about right. And then we have these intervals that we need to use for polling. And essentially, listen for payment. Essentially, this all gets activated once an invoice has been created. And at that point, we want to listen for the payment. So we take in the current timestamp, and we basically hit this invoice's endpoint, the creation date start to the current Unix timestamp. So we're just listening to our invoice database for this new invoice, and we're going through all of our invoices, right? We're getting data from the request. We're saying data.invoices.for each invoice if invoice.settled. Then we know we got it. Success, the payment is settled. And maybe there would be something more we'd want to do here with the invoice, like maybe show the pre-image. Like we might want to do that when we release it, but this is fine right now. We know when it's settled. But this listen for payment, we have to know when to call it and for how long to call it. And that's where this start polling comes into play. And so we start polling. We have a polling interval. So we listen for payments every two seconds. That's 2,000 milliseconds right there. We hit this function with the new current timestamp. And we just look for a settled invoice. And then we set a listen timer. We decrement it down. And then we have this full timeout cycle where all of this is happening again and again for 363 a lot of milliseconds that equal an hour. Is that 360,000? No, 3,600,000. We reset the state if basically the timeout gets cleared. So this is just like we reset everything back to 0 if the invoice has been paid. We have a function here to format the time. You know, this is really gross, but essentially this format time, we just shove this into the tipping display, pass it down to the tipping display, and then we just format time with the listen timer that we pass in. So yeah, the timing stuff is probably the grossest thing here. I will maybe want to try to simplify this for people because I want to make this into an easy to understand and easy to deploy app template. And hopefully the only new stuff that you'd be seeing in this template would be Lightning stuff, and hopefully that would be simple and easy to follow. So we go into the tipping display. This is where we show our QR code if we have an invoice, and then we just pass in the listen timer and the format time. So this is pretty straightforward. It's kind of just displaying, and we have a copy to clipboard function here that will grab our invoice whenever we click the QR code. Finally, there's the tipping form. This is where we initially put in our amount and our memo. It's pretty simple. We're just displaying amount. We have an input for that, memo, input for that, and then we have a submit button. And our submit button right here, handle submit. We first of all check that the amount is greater than 0. And then we try to post, actually we'll stop post a new invoice. And this is our body that we pass in right here. So we have a value of the amount that the user set. And memo right here, this is something I set aside for later. So pre-pinned the memo with voltage tipper to identify all payments from this app. Maybe there's a better way to do this, but I was asking myself, okay, I'm using this node for other stuff. How do I determine what payments were sent through my tipping page? Because maybe I want to display them down here at some point in the future. So that was why I was just like, okay, my easy solution is let's just put a memo in every one of these tips that says voltage tipper plus a space plus whatever custom memo the user adds, which the user doesn't have to add a memo. But this way, later on, we'll be able to like look at all the past invoices and search for this memo to see which ones occurred in our app. So not the most excellent criteria for doing this, but it works. And then, of course, we have an expiry of an hour, which is another thing that we added here just to make sure that our timer that we're showing matches up with the actual invoice. The headers, this is what we put on every request as permission with our invoice macaroon. It's pretty simple. So we post to create this new invoice, and then we set it to data.paymentRequest, which is what LND gives us back. And then we create a Unix timestamp immediately, and we hit that start polling. So this is where that whole flow kind of begins, where as soon as that invoice is created, we stamp it in time, and we're like, all right, from this time on, let's listen for new invoices that are settled. Once again, that's something that we could have better criteria for, because we could be more specific by, we can create the invoice and we can search for that invoice, for example, by its pre-image or something like that. LND supports this. If we do like lookup invoice, invoice of the R hash string. Yeah, so lookup invoice attempts look up an invoice according to its payment hash. The past payment hash must be 32 bytes, if not, an error is returned. Cool. So we might do something like this eventually, but I'm just using the list invoices function here, which just returns all of our invoices. And our node is small enough to this point to where we don't need to worry about looking through too many invoices. Also, since we're being a component, since we're passing in this creation date start query parameter, we're really limiting how many of the invoices we're actually looking through in our database. So that is a good consideration. And cool, I'm caught up to speed now. Oh, and we also have this use toast. This is just a hook that basically wraps our whole app and lets us throw a toast anywhere we want to. That looks pretty nice and can tell the user that things are happening. So sweet, that is the current state we're in. So a few things I want to do. First of all, it's a little weird that you have to click the QR code here. Maybe you don't know to do that. So I want to put the invoice down here some kind of formatted way, and I also want to let the user know that this is an expiry. So let's get that into place. That'll be a good way to start some simple UI stuff. So let's do let's say expires in, and I want to make this text XS, extra small. I think that's what we want. Whoa, that's extra small. Let's just do text SM. And let's get rid of this extra space. Probably make it a span. Cool. And I might also say padding top is 0, margin top is 0, just so we can squish these together a little bit more. Sweet. Okay, that's clear. Let's add this invoice now. So I'm trying to think of how you want to display this nicely. Let's say if I want to go donate to OpenSats, what does their tipping page look like? Donate to general fund. No, enter custom amount. Oh yeah, so this is BTC Pay Server, scan, copy. Okay, and that's a pretty good UI, not exactly what I was thinking. But let's just throw the invoice down there. Background white. And yeah. Voice. We have the invoice here. And we're probably going to want to format this because it's absolutely going to blow. Yeah. We need to make the text black. Class name. Text black. And let's format. How do we format this? I want to like split it between like the first 5 characters and the last 5 characters. Let's see if Copilot can help us out. Only show first 5 chars and the last 5 chars with ... in the middle. Something like that. Voice.slice from 0 to 5 plus ... and then invoice.slice minus 5. That looks about right. Cool. Let's do more though. Let's do like 10. We can make it a little bigger. Minus 10. Beautiful. And let's say text center. And what do we say? Text XL. Let's make it a little bigger. Text black. Sweet. Click to copy, but right now only the QR code itself is actually clickable. So let's make this whole container clickable. Right here, QR code, we have on click copy to clipboard. So I'll just remove this and add it to the div. We also have this class name. I want to add this as well, because this will give our cursor a pointer and it will kind of make things more opaque as we hover over it. So let's just throw that in here. Sweet. Does that look weird? Okay, that works. Great. So slightly better display here. This QR code's a bit large, and this is already taking up some decent space. So I'm just going to drop this down to like 300. Maybe like 350 would be a good middle ground. Cool. Looks kind of nice. All right. So now I feel like this simple flow, it looks nice. Oh, let's see if our invoice, I haven't tried an invoice this old before. Let's see if we get this paid. Send. Nice, it works. Cool. Okay, so let's get in some LNURL stuff, some Lightning address. That's what I was really excited to get into today. So I'm thinking it would be cool. Well, this is a template app. It's supposed to be, I wanted to make it easy to deploy. Maybe you don't know anything. Maybe you just want to have your own tipping page. You should be able to deploy it without knowing anything. But maybe you want to learn a little bit of what's going on in the background and learn a few things about building Lightning apps. So that's why I want to shove as much of that cool functionality that people want in here. So I'm thinking right below our title, we can have a Lightning address that displays custom for the user. And it's based off of the user's alias, which mine is plebdev here. And then we can have a raw LNURL pay right below that. Just kind of show both of those examples. And so I have a repo here called Lightning Address Workshop. And there's a recording, there's slides to it, and I kind of show you how to build a free Lightning address sort of app, or just build Lightning address into a Next.js app for free. And so I'm kind of going to be following this, but making it a little more slim, a little more tight. And a lot of the LNURL stuff and Lightning address stuff is here in the API. So this is much of what we're going to be adding on. But first of all, if you don't know what Lightning address is, we can go to lightningaddress.com. So like an email address, but for your Bitcoin. So you'll have a name at something.something. And this will be an endpoint, a URL that you're going to be able to, or the sender is going to be able to request invoices through. So this is kind of a marketing page, but we can go read the documentation, and this tells you a bit more detail about how things go. This was the image I was looking for. So Lightning address right here, we've got username at domain.com. So for example, I have my real Lightning address is, I think it's Austin at bitcoinpleb.dev. And this is one I built custom, right? So you have Austin at bitcoinpleb.dev. And what you would do is you would destructure this in such a way to where it becomes, bitcoinpleb.dev / well-known LNURL / Austin, right? So that's just kind of how, when you give me a Lightning address, I know to turn it into this, and then I can request at this domain, I get this object back, and then I can request from the callback right here, and that will give me an invoice. It's a little bit convoluted when you're learning it for the first time because there's a few steps in the flow here, but I think it makes sense after you build it. But before all of this, we have to start with LNURL because Lightning address is built off of LNURL. So here at LUD1, this is the LNURL spec. They're called LUDs, each of the pieces of spec here. So this is the base spec, I guess, that we would call it. And it's basically describing what this is. So LUD01, base LNURL encoding and decoding. So LNURL is a Bech32 encoded HTTPS/onion URL that can be interacted with automatically by a wallet in a standard way, such that a service can provide extra services for a better experience for the user. Okay, what does this really mean? Well, what this means is we're taking URLs that might offer standard services, and the most standard service, I guess, we might have is, I want to get an invoice from you. I want to get an invoice from you, but I don't want to have to ask you. I want to be able to get it on my own. I want to be able to get it automatically. And that's what the pay spec is inside of LNURL. But really, all the big idea for this is that we Bech32 encode a URL, and then a Lightning wallet will be able to read that Bech32 encoded URL and determine what to do off of it. Why do we use Bech32? I mean, essentially because that's the encryption scheme we're already using within a lot of our Bitcoin and Lightning wallets. So it's something that's already built in. You might already be scanning a Bech32 encoded something, inside of a Lightning wallet. So the idea here is like you can scan other stuff for services, and those services, you can tell what kind of services are available by the tags. And so it's a little confusing with this first spec, but where we're going to start is the pay request spec. And then we're going to go from pay request to Lightning address. And so with the pay request spec, we basically have this URL will be Bech32 encoded. And when you scan that, you're going to go request from the URL, and you're going to get back something like this. And this will tell you, okay, here's a callback. This is where you can get an invoice. Here's the max you can send. Here's the minimum you can send. Here's some metadata. This is just metadata that'll say something like, this is Austin's, you know, LUT06 endpoint or something like that. And then the tag here, we have a standardized tag that says pay request. And so this is what is telling us what kind of features are available on our LNURL. And, you know, there's some way you're supposed to handle errors here. You have to do stuff with the metadata to embed the metadata in the invoice, and it gets a little bit long. But that's okay. We have some example code. I'm going to be copying some of my own code here, but we're going to be building this step by step. And finally, from LUT06, once we have this in place, we'll be able to do LUT16, which is Lightning address. And all this is going to involve is essentially rewriting, just reformatting how the URL is going to look so that it's human readable versus being this, you know, unreadable string. Okay, so let's get into it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to build an LNURL.js endpoint. And this is going to be for basically our LUT06 pay request. So let's delete this. This is that was the little endpoint they include with us. So going into the API directory, let's make LNURL.js. Cool. And I believe I'm going to stop my server. We're going to need npm i Bech32 to do any encoding and decoding. And if we go to my example code here, this is pretty simple. Let's just copy this and refactor it. We don't have this garbage. We don't need that. We don't have this garbage. Cool. This is nice and simple. So we have an endpoint here with a handler. And this will only accept GET requests. And so we have metadata, first of all, that we need to put. And so this will, yeah, just be some description of your endpoint. So you might want to change this to something. I'm going to keep mine as sample LN address endpoint. That seems fine. Right, and then in the response here that we're building this object. So callback refers the endpoint that will be called by the LNURL server to get the invoice. This callback endpoint will be the same one we use for our Lightning address. Yeah, so we might want to format this actually a little bit differently. Because callback, yeah, so this is hard-coded for my name. So I think we want this to be just callback, because this tipping page is going to be for one person. So we don't need to specify who the callback is for. So we can delete that comment. Max sendable, this is in millisatoshi, so this is like a million sats maybe, and then min sendable is 1 sat. Oops. And then we have to stringify our metadata inside of this, and then we have a tag of pay request. Cool. So this is, I mean, this is something we can just make this, and we can just try and hit it really quick. Run dev. One thing we're missing here, though, backend URL. We don't have a backend URL right now. So we're going to add this into our environment variables. So we're going to say backend URL. And since this is going on the API, we don't actually need to put next public because it's not going to get bundled into the client-side code that gets delivered to the user's browser, essentially. That's why they make you put next public here, is any client-side variables you have, even though you want to hide them, your app gets loaded into the user's browser either way. So it's like, you know, it's there. So the backend URL, this is basically just going to be like the URL of, you know, yeah, where our server's running. So for right now, we'll just put http://localhost 3000. Sweet. So that's just the base URL here. And that should work for this. We'll see if it works. So we're at localhost 3000. Now let's go to /API/LNURL. And cool, let's zoom in. Yep, this all looks right. So let's compare to the spec. Blood 06. Metadata is a string. Metadata JSON must be presented as a raw string here. Yeah, the metadata is always confusing. Okay, so it's text plain, whatever. Yeah. Sweet. Zoom back out. Okay, now we need to make this callback endpoint. We need to make this exist. And it needs to return an invoice. So let's make a new file. We'll call it callback.js. And go back to our reference code here. We're already breaking from the flow a little bit here, so mine is right here. And this is where all the garbage is, where we have to deal with what's called a description hash, which is part of how we prove that the invoice that we're giving to you came from the same endpoint. It came from our node. But let's copy this, get it in here, and then we'll sort through all this garbage. Got backend URL, that is right. We don't need this. And we don't need this. Add that. All right, query params. We don't have a slug anymore. We're doing nothing with the slug. A slug is basically just, how would you say? It would be like if I say, you know, /LNURL/Austin. This Austin might be a slug. Like we haven't hard coded and set aside an endpoint called Austin, but we can still read in this value as a slug. It's just, yeah, unnamed thing that gets passed to us in the URL. Okay, cool. So query parameters, so when we make a request to someone's LNURL, we need to pass an amount as a query parameter. Let's actually see what this looks like on a real LNURL. I can go, I have one on Stacker News. I have a Lightning address. So I could go to like, .well-known. Here it is, LNURLP, Bitcoin pleb dev. Great. So this is actually a Lightning address endpoint, but it functions the same. I have a callback right here. And if I just go to this callback, it tells me amount must be greater than or equal to 1,000 millisats. There's an error. So what I need to do is pass a query parameter, amount equals 1,000. And now, there we go. I get back an invoice. So that's exactly how our callback should work. So we got to check for that query param. Query param.amount. And else we throw 400, we say amount is not specified. So that looks good. So if we have the amount, then we create our metadata. This is the same one as before, sample LN address endpoint. we stringify it, we hash it with SHA-256, and then digest it as hex, and then we encode it as base 64, and then this description hash ends up in our request to create a new invoice, which we're going to have to screw with this because it looks like I was doing something custom here. But let's talk about the description hash. But we're not going to get too caught up on it, but back to the spec here. So we have this whole thing. Okay. Metadata, that's just talking about how it should be formatted. We talk about min and max. Callback. Okay, right here, step 7. The LN wallet, so this is the payer, verifies that H tag in the provided invoice is a hash of a metadata string converted to a byte array in UTF-8 encoding. So this was something that was really confusing to me when I was first implementing it. But essentially, this just means that when we create our invoice, we want to take our metadata and hash it in such a way and pass it as hard-coded information that's a part of our invoice, so that the person that's sending, they can verify that it's really us. So there's still ways that you can kind of trick this and finagle it a little bit, but you know, it's a good basic security feature, and we want to follow the spec, so we're gonna do it like so. So we make the description hash, enough of the description hash. Moving on, we get the value here from query params.amount, and we divide by 1,000 because it's millisatoshis, so we're going to turn it into satoshis. And if after that case the value is less than 1, then we're just going to say the amount is too low and return. Otherwise, we're going to, I'm going to change this completely. We're actually going to delete this. And we're going to say create invoice. Otherwise, this is what we're going to do, create an invoice. So we're already creating an invoice elsewhere. Here inside of tipping form. Yeah, right here. So let's just take this existing request and we'll refactor it a little bit. So into the callback. We have Axios imported. That's good. Okay. So there's no memo here, so we'll just keep voltage tipper as the memo. The amount is actually going to be value right here. So I'll say value is equal to value. Expiry, an hour. I mean, yeah, we can do that, I suppose. But let's actually not. There's no need. And then we want to say, I think we can just put description underscore hash is equal to description hash. But let's go check the L&D docs. So this would be add invoice, post to v1/invoices. That looks correct. And description hash. So description underscore hash, something we can pass into the request body as bytes. That's interesting. Do we have it as bytes right now? Oh, that's gRPC type. Rest type is a string. Okay, that's good. So description hash is the hash SHA-256 of a description of the payment used in the description of payment. Memo is too long to naturally fit within the description field of an encoded payment request. Cool. So just an additional description that we can pass in and then hash it to kind of make it a little more compact, but still make it verifiable. Great, so the value, description hash, and then we have it. And from there, we should be able to say if data dot payment request. Should be. Then we're going to return a thing. We're going to return, no, we need to say res.status 200.json. Okay, we're going to return something not like this. So let's look at the spec to see what to return. The LN service takes a GET request and returns JSON responsive form. So PR string, so this is Bech32 serialized Lightning invoice. That's just the Lightning invoice, how we get it. And then we have routes, which routes is an optional, like we can add route hints, I suppose, optionally. But we're on Voltage and we have a free channel from Voltage, so we don't need to worry about that. We're gonna be able to receive payments. So we'll keep routes empty. So that's pretty easy. So I can say PR is equal to data.payment request, and then we'll just keep routes hard-coded as an empty array. So you give us status 200, we return. Okay, I think that looks good. So let's give it a try here and see if we get our invoice back. So now if I go to /API/LNURL, I will see, okay, here's the info about my LNURL, and if I click on a callback, it will tell me amount is not specified. But if I add amount equals, yeah, let's do 10,000. This will be a 10 sat invoice. Host is not defined. Okay, that's good. So we need to bring in, oh, we also don't need this. We need const host equals next public host, and then const, what is this? Invoice macaroon. Okay, that looks correct. Let's try it again. Boom, there it is. We get an invoice back. Let's see if it's real. See if we can really pay it. 10 sets. Beautiful, and it works. Right, this is going pretty smooth so far. What are we, 45 minutes in? Time flies when your code is just working. Yeah, we'll keep that. So all of this looks good. Yeah, so now we have an LNURL. Now we have a callback. But we want to test the actual LNURL spec because we're hitting our own endpoints and our endpoints are working. But we want to be able to get an LNURL string like how it shows in the LNURL spec. So I'm just going to create a new API endpoint called getLNURL.js. And this should just, let's go back to our reference code where I have a similar endpoint, and we'll copy and refactor this. See what's here. We don't need this. We have Bech32. Encode LNURL. We don't need this either. All right. Great. So in this endpoint, we're just saying we know our original LNURL URL is this. So localhost 3000/API/LNURL. So we take that original URL and we encode it using Bech32. This is actually, I think, example code that you can get inside of the spec docs. And we simply just return it. This is not standard at all. This is just an endpoint we're going to make just so we can fetch at any time, fetch our actual LNURL string. So let's see if this works. And we'll be able to test it as well with a very cool tool. So if I go API get LNURL. Okay, we get this thick capsed out LNURL string. I'm going to go to a tool called lightningdecoder.com. Beautiful. So we can enter any Bolt 11 LNURL or Lightning address, and we can basically have it decoded and see the information. And this is a great way to verify if we're like actually following the spec and we're doing things right. So let's see if they can decode our ln URL. Network error, attempting to fetch resource. Okay, so we're still on localhost. We're still on localhost. So because of that, it's trying to make the request and it can't because it can't make a request to our localhost. So let's deploy what we have. Let's literally deploy what we have. And we should have a publicly available domain from that point. So we have all this new code. Yeah, let's just, so git add everything. To make sure we're not pushing .env again. Git commit -m. So what did we do? We cleaned up the tipping display. We added ln URL. ln URL pay endpoints. Let's just say that. Git push. All right, so luckily I have already actually made a new project for this before we went live. So we should be able to see that this is redeployed. Yeah, it's building my update right now. But we actually need to add another environment variable because we have to add our environment variables locally and then on the remote or on the host. And so this is what I have so far. We have the host, that's my Lightning node, invoice macaroon, and read macaroon. Let's add, what is it, backend URL. Backend URL, and so this is going to be our deployment now. So in production, it's going to be our deployment, which will be https://voltage tipper.vercel.app. That's what it should be. Let's save that. And then I'm just going to redeploy my last deployment here. So that way it will bundle up that new environment variable that it didn't have before. Great. And yeah, this is the Lightning node I'm using right here. Doesn't have too much. I got my free channel from Voltage, and it looks like I have 11K sats. This is just what I've donated to myself so far, I think, when testing last week and this week. I don't know. That's a lot. Did I really? Maybe we did 10K sats at some point. Right. It's deploying. Everything's looking good. This is what's great about just using a standard Next.js template. Like, yeah, we have a lot of options, and it'll just work when we deploy it. Okay, great. So voltage tipper.vercel.app, it exists. If you go here, though, you're only going to be tipping me, so warning. But let's now /API/get ln URL. And now this will look actually a little bit different because it's encoding a different URL. Now let's see if Lightning Decoder will like this one. Error. Oh no. Maybe we messed up the domain. Voltage tipper.vercel.app API get ln URL. Let's check our code here. So we're saying that the original should be at backend URL /API/ln URL. That looks correct. Let's double check our environment variable. Maybe we had a typo. Voltage tipper.vercel.app. And I don't think we need to put a slash in there or anything like that. No. Yeah, let's put original URL in here too, just so we can see it and kind of troubleshoot. And then we can push this change, get add everything. C original URL and get ln URL. Get push. Cool. So it's also possible maybe my redeploy did not actually bundle that new environment variable. We'll see though. But yeah, from this point, once all of these pieces are working and working on our deployment, then Lightning address is pretty easy after that. It's just we got to kind of wrap it up in a certain format. Okay, so that's deployed. Okay, so this is what we're encoding in the ln URL. And that gives us back this. Looks right. Network error. Let's see what it says. Oh, it's a CORS header issue. So they can't request to our domain. Oh, no. That is the problem. Okay, so this is why I actually added this middleware originally. CORS middleware, run middleware. Do I copy this over? Pretty simple. It's just a middleware.js file here. So if you don't know, CORS is it's basically just the most annoying thing in the world. Cross-origin resource sharing is what it's called. And so we have to explicitly say when another domain can request resources from us. But it says it's just missing the CORS header access control allow origin. So can I add the CORS header here? How do I do that? Let's deploy ChatGPT. See what the lowest hanging fix is for this. Help me fix this CORS error on my endpoint. And this is actually the endpoint that's getting hit by the Lightning decoder. So, so install CORS npm I CORS. I see. It's basically wanting me to do the same thing I'd done before. Well, yeah, in that case, let's just copy what we have right here because this is the same exact fix. And we'll make now our very first utils. We'll keep it inside a source. New folder, utils. And we'll have CORS middleware.js. Okay, so initializing CORS middleware, we're just allowing everyone, and then we have to run this middleware. This is basically going to get run on every one of our endpoints that we want to explicitly put it. So for example, like right here, we import it. Let's go back to our endpoint. API, lnurl. Import it, and then we just run it right here at the top. So let's go ahead and add this to our other endpoints. Get lnurl. Run middleware, and then callback. Import it and run it right at the top. Okay. Sweet. So let's try that again. Added cores middleware. Yeah, this is kind of stuff I wanted to avoid having because it just bogs down what otherwise is mostly simple code, mostly a simple flow, but hopefully it's not too confusing. I can probably leave comments in the final version, or I definitely will. Okay, we got an error on our deployment. Let's see. Can't find @utils/middleware. Oh, @utils/ it's supposed to be cores middleware, just like that. Let's actually test it. npm run dev. Okay, cool. Doesn't break anything. Fix the import. Cool. Getting those commits in for the day. We'll give that a second to build. So what's really cool about using Vercel here is that Vercel gives us free, what are called, what are they called? Serverless functions. Yeah, sorry. They're called different things on different platforms, but Vercel calls them serverless functions. All that this really means is we can effectively make an API like we would, but our API isn't going to be always online. It only comes online as soon as it gets a request. So this is sort of how serverless functions, or they call them Lambda functions sometimes, this is how they work. And because of this, Vercel offers these for free, right? So you can't necessarily get a free database, but you can get a free, always awaiting to respond to a request API. And then Vercel also makes it very easy to add your own custom domain. So the combination of these things makes it to where if you have a Lightning node, then you can very easily make a free Lightning address with Vercel, which normally requires a ton of infrastructure, a ton of management, but we can kind of just build it and set it and forget it. Okay, cool. So our deployment ran successfully there. Let's now try this one more time, get our LNURL, and put it into the decoder. Beautiful. Okay. I'm glad we checked the console here. I was thinking I did something wrong. We didn't do anything wrong. We just had to enable them to request. And so they request and they're able to parse it perfectly. And so that seems, yeah, I mean, it seems to have worked. Interestingly, let's get an invoice. Let's get an invoice. /callback amount equals 1,000. Let's see if it can decode the description hash in our invoice. So paste that. Oh, interesting. Unknown tag, unknown tag. Commit hash, payment hash, prefix, invoice, amount. I guess they don't show the payment or the description hash in here. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, well, either way, we know it's a valid invoice because we were able to pay our invoices so far. Great, so we now have LNURL. We have LNURL pay, and it works. So the final thing is this whole scheme right here, the domain.wellknown LNURLP username. So now we need to make this, here we are all the way back around full circle. We need to make this resolve to our pay request object that we already have created. So let's go back to our reference code. So we can see I have this ln URL p, and it has a slug inside of it. And what are we doing here? We're taking in the slug. This should be the user's name, making sure it's not undefined. And then if it's equal to whatever our desired name is, then we kind of just return the same object as before that we've already defined in ln URL. So it's pretty straightforward, but what we want to do first is what's called rewrites. So this is something cool that Next.js lets you do. Inside of our config, we can define a rewrite. So we choose a destination. I'm choosing API, ln URL p, slug, and I'm saying I want you to instead resolve this to .well-known ln URL p slug. Right, so that way it fits the format that Lightning Address is expecting. And this can be one of the weirder and kind of hard things with putting together this URL scheme if you're not super familiar working with, like, I don't know, a bunch of API stuff. So let's copy this and we'll move it into our next config. Cool. And now we need to define this folder. So folder will be ln URL p, and then we'll have slug.js inside of it. Cool. We'll just paste in what we had before. This is called cores middleware. Back in URL, we run the middleware. Okay. Our callback is just back in URL, API callback. This is the same. This is the same. Okay, but now we have this hard-coded Bitcoin pleb dev. So I want to be able to resolve this to the user's alias. And we need to get info in order to do that. So I think we should just put that request inside of here. So let's do that. So in components, no, actually in index.js, this is where we already have this axios.get, .then.catch. So let's copy this. Put it right here. But I'm going to say const data equals and just got to close it up like that. Okay, cool. Format it. Okay, sweet. So we make this request looking for data. And so that data, res.data is node info. So it should be data.alias is who we're looking for. Okay, and so then we can say if data and data.alias and slug is equal to data.alias. Right, so the name that if the name that the person is requesting is our node alias, it exists and all of that, then we know we're good. So we know they're requesting for us. Great. Host, I need to add host and macaroon here. Yeah, read macaroon. Okay. Let's try it locally. Let's see if this works locally. Run dev. Voltage to next.config. Oh, what did we change here? Export default. Okay. That's fine. I'll do that. Don't yell at me. Export default next config. Okay, cool. So now we should have a valid, we should have a Lightning address that is essentially plebdev at localhost 3000, right? So this is currently our Lightning address that we'd share with someone. And then how they would decode it is they would say localhost 3000 slash dot well known slash lnurlp. And then it needs to match my node alias, so plebdev. Is it gonna work? Is it gonna work? Okay, Axios and okay, forgot our import. Import Axios from Axios. Yeah, this does, having this additional request inside of here, it does slow this endpoint down a little bit as well. But no big deal. Something's happening. API resolved. That's in responses may result installed requests. I think we need an else right here, and we'll like kind of handle, yeah, not found. Not found, okay. Instantly not found, sweet. So something's wrong here, so let's check. Let's just console.log our data that we're getting back. Hit it again. We get undefined. Data is undefined. How can that be? Passing in the macaroon. Let's just see what response. Let's just call it response. And we'll console.log response. Let's see what we get here. Promise pending. Oh no, we're not awaiting. That's why. We need to say equals await. Simple mistake. This should work now. Oh, look at that. lnurlp plebdev, but if I add another v, not found. Not found. That's beautiful, and that's very fast too. Great. Get rid of that console log. Okay, awesome. Let's add this into the front end now. So from the front end, so we can get our lnurl from this lnurl endpoint, and then we know what our Lightning address will be based off of backend URL. Can I access this on the front end? Okay, let's get started. So into index.js, I think we want to put this below, yeah, our h1. Let's make a div. Last name. So just say flex column. Yeah, that's good for right now. Do a span, we'll say Lightning address. That's close. Node info.alias. So get the current root URL. No, we'll ask ChatGPT how to do that. Right now, I'll just put, we'll just hard code it, localhost 3000. Oh wait, no, we've got this backwards. It's supposed to be node info dot alias at localhost 3000. Sweet. And then we'll do something similar. We'll say span ln URL, and then we have to get the ln URL. So we'll have another API request that will, yeah, once we have the node info, we'll call this and say Axios dot get. And we actually just need to get, yeah, slash API slash get ln URL. And we should get back an ln URL object from that. So we'll say const ln URL set ln URL res.data.ln URL. Sweet. And we need to make sure before we render this, we have the ln URL as well. So if we have the node info and the ln URL, we'll display the info. Okay, let's see how this looks. Enough API garbage. Let's see some UI. Okay, well, not centered. Looks terrible, but we'll work on it. We are able to get this ln URL though, so that's good. So say mx auto. Text center for all of these. Oops. Great. And for these spans, I'm going to make them small just to differentiate them. Text small. And we'll do margin top 0, padding top 0 for each of these so we can kind of squish them together a little bit more. This one and this one. Great. Okay, so now let's ask ChatGPT, how do we get the current URL? JavaScript. I should know how to do that. How do I get the current? Window.location.href. Cool. So we'll set that at the top here. And so this will get created whenever we render. I think it's fine if I just leave it up here as a constant. I think that should be good. And so now it's at current URL. Where are we at? Okay. at, okay, that's pretty good. We need to URL dot trim replace there we go. Sweet. We'll add another one just to replace the slash with an empty string and closed off. Oh, and I gotta get rid of that. Okay, sweet. Beautiful. Okay. Beautiful display. This is a terribly ugly one-liner, so I'm gonna greatly simplify this. So let's just move this over here. So then the current URL now looks like that. Great. Grab the current URL and format it. Our Lightning display. At window's not defined. Okay, so we need to so let's go ahead and make a new piece of state for this, and we'll wrap this up in a use effect. We've already got this one here, so let's use this. And then I can say that, and then we set current URL to current URL. And now we'll also add this to the condition here, just to make sure we don't have any bugs. Refresh. Okay, no window errors now. Great. So let's deploy this, push all this to GitHub, and see if our Lightning address will work in prod. Commit-m. So we added LUD16 and displaying LN address and LN URL on homepage on UI. Okay, it's exciting. We should test it with a really big payment. So I should with what we have in place, I actually forget about even visiting it. I should be able to say send, and I should be able to say plebdev at voltage tipper .vercel.app, and it just deployed. How much we want 10 sats, confirm. Boom, just like that. Success payment sent. That's awesome. That really works. Let's see. Let's go into ThunderHub because it's this node. Wait, no, I can actually refresh. Let's send a big amount. Okay, 11K sats, 11,491 sats. And this is my total balance. So let's try this again. Let's send a bunch. Let's send plebdev voltage tipper.vercel.app. What? I can't. Oh man, I must have hit my limit for the week or something. Okay, well this will add 69 cents. So that's pretty good. So we should see that 792 jump up to like 850. Supposedly worked. Ooh, look at that. Just like that. Instantly we get it. We're now at 12K sats. Oh, that's beautiful. You love to see that. Tipper. Great. And if where can you pay an LN URL from? I'm forgetting. Can I do this in Alby still? Send to this LN URL. Next. 10 sats. Let's see. What are we at right now? We're at 12K 491. Get to 12K 501 should be. Yep, 12,501. Nice. So the LN URL works as well. Sweet. Still got another like 40 minutes here. I wonder if we want to try and read in past transactions. Just kind of get that started. So maybe like before the user submits, maybe we can have like a little display down below that just lists out and maps through any invoice that has a memo voltage tipper inside of it. Let's do that. Components, we have tipping. Let's make a new file. Past tips.js. Port React from okay, and we're gonna bring in state, probably use effect. And I'm gonna say tips, past tips, set past tips. That works. No, I actually want to call it tips. Tips, set tips. Cool, so state set aside for that. We know the drill here. Use effect. And I'm gonna import Axios from Axios. Except here, so we've already done this request before. This is our lesson payments, right? Getting the invoices. Yeah, so let's just take this. Post V1 invoices, we're doing a get, and we need to put the headers. Cool, invoice macaroon. Let's add our environment variables. We need host, and we need invoice macaroon. Cool. If I close it like that, like that. Set tips. Okay, cool. But we need to, there's going to be criteria for our tips. So, what do we expect to get back? We expect to get back an invoices object from this endpoint, or an invoices array, I believe. List invoices. Yeah, we get an invoices array, and that invoices array should have a memo on it. And that's what we'll be looking through. So if res.data.invoices and the invoice's length is greater than 0, sweet. Now we want to do a for each. So .invoices.for each. Like that, yeah. For each invoice, if invoice.memo includes voltage tipper, then we set tips. We set tips and we keep the previous invoices inside of there, and we add our new invoice because we're kind of going through each one in a loop. Cool. So we set tips. Okay, now let's display these tips. Return. It'll be really ugly at first, as all things are. Okay, class name. This is going to be flex. Flex call. MX auto. So we center it. Actually, no, not MX auto. Justify start. Tips.length is greater than 0, and tips.map to iterate through them. For each tip, we'll have an index as well. How do we do this? Like that, that. And is that right? Am I missing one? Or add an extra one? Okay, there we go. Tip.value. Okay, try and display stuff here. Format this. Value, memo. Yeah, what do we have here? Inside of the response. Message. So it gives us back invoices of type invoice, which is, okay, all of this stuff. So memo, we've got value, creation date, sell date. So tip.value, tip.memo, tip.creation date to locale string. Description hash, expiry. Yeah, we can't see who this came from. Yeah, that's fine. We won't dox our tippers. Okay, run dev. Oh, I need to put this somewhere. So we have past tips. But now I'm going to import it into index.js. Tipping component. Inside of tipping component, actually, we have the tipping form, and then we have the invoice. So this should actually be invoice true, show this. Else, we're going to bring in our new form. So import past tips from /past tips. Past tips. See how that looks. Whoa, look at that. Okay. Unformatted, but amount, we have date 6/7/2024, 11:35 a.m. Is that right? And the latest one, I guess it's going in reverse order, sit 2/22. Cool, that's very cool. Yeah, we need to I need a special component or something to put this in. This is the, turn in dark mode. This is the component library we're using. I wonder this is like button data table. Yeah, that looks good. Let's have ChatGPT help us implement this library. Can you implement a data table past tips here? Code my component library. Yeah, we could do this ourselves, but it's this will just work. We just got to wrap it in this format. But yeah, table will be nice. I wonder how we can handle the size, like pagination, stripped rows, paginator. Okay. So rows per page options, paginator rows 5. Sweet. So we can do something like this once we have a basic implementation. Bring all these extra imports in. We don't need a theme. I already have a theme. I don't think I need that either. All right, what's wrong? Missing key prop. So key. Key equals index. Yeah, when you iterate over objects, they want you to put a unique ID in each one. It looks like there's already a paginator in here with rows of 10, rows per page options. Let's see how this looks. We screwed something up. We probably don't need to map here. Yeah, we don't need to map because this already maps automatically. So I just need condition. 3, 4. Nope, not that. Document. So we no longer need key. Okay, cool. There we go. So let's have 5 rows. Then what is rows per page option? Because like once I go, okay. Oh, you can change how many per page right here. Okay, that's kind of interesting. I think I don't want that though. That's just extra UI, not necessary. Great. So it's a little wide here. Oh, I'm zoomed in actually. This is how it actually looks. Okay. I also want this to go in reverse order. Or like from order of newest to oldest. Value tips. This is like tips. I almost need to sort it up front. Go back here. Can you help me sort my tips as I'm pulling them in and processing them? Where? So we want to filter. So filter tips. So we just sort everything up front. Or wait, filtered. We filter it, then we sort it. Okay, that's a little bit cleaner. Okay, now we go back. Yeah, most recent first, 222, 221, 220. Yeah, we might we might strip out if it includes field memo, header memo. Yeah, that's a little bit nitpicky to try and strip out the voltage tipper for now. But there's got to be some way to do that with this library. This is like the field country.name. Can I put like memo dot strip? How do you strip out? JavaScript dot strip or dot trim. No, it's not white space. Split and slice. So slice is by index, split is okay. So we can split the string into an array. So basically we can say memo.strip. Wait, I have to do single quotes or something. Voltage dash tipper. And then we'll want index 1 because voltage dot tipper will be at the beginning. So we'll say at index 1. Is this going to work, this JavaScript inside of a string? Let's see. Oh my gosh, it actually works. Oops. Dot 1. Okay, so now if I make a new tip, 11 sats. Hello, Os. Get our beautiful display here. It's still a little bit big. Everything isn't quite fitting here, but that's okay. Let's copy that. Beautiful. Payment has been settled. 11. And we're getting nothing in the memo here, so that's kind of interesting. If I say 0, say 0, it will show nothing still. Yeah, I kind of just broke it, it looks like. That's okay. We'll just keep it as memo for right now. The memo field. Sweet. Are these all of them? Amount, memo, date. Amount, memo, date. Let's see, can we have index, index, index? Row index. No, this should be fine. And one last thing, after an invoice is paid, let's check that one more time. So this is my latest right now, amount 10. Let's make 22. This is it. I want it after we successfully pay this invoice. I want it to refetch. It does. Okay, great. So it refetches and it instantly shows us our tip here at the top. It's pretty cool. I feel like I want one other like row to show inside of here. What do we have to show? Pre-image. R hash, creation date, description hash. Oh, you do have description hash right here. But those will all be, well, they won't all be the same. Expiry route hints, private, add index, state. Yeah, not much else we can display here. I mean, we could do some more requests to like query our node to get more information about these invoices, I think, but probably nothing that'll be worth displaying. This is already pretty cool as is. Nice. Well, we got everything done that I wanted to. That's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and push this up, see if it deploys. Get add everything. -m added past tips. Get push. See it deploying here. Okay. Here we go. And this works. Copy it. Send. Eight through Lightning address. Do 9 through LNURL. Very cool. And so this is another thing. We could pull this endpoint because now I actually have to refresh. But I see my 9, I see my 8. The timestamps. So should we pull? Should we pull this? Past tips. Yeah, let's do it. Can we pull this request for past tips every 5 seconds? Set interval in the use effect. Yeah, we have polling logic already for the listening for when the user creates an invoice right in the UI. But this got pretty confusing because we're kind of doing two poll. We're doing like a poll to like listen, but at the same time we're doing like a countdown, and they're sort of intertwined. That's why this ended up like this is. I wonder if it's definitely something I want to do next is clean that up and make that a little more simple. But this should be pretty straightforward at the interval, so. Okay, so here's our use effect. Updated. Side of past tips. Dot then. Okay, that's the same logic. That looks good. Dot catch. This is now wrapped in its own function that gets called every 5 seconds. But doesn't this function need to be async? Am I wrong? Let's give it a try. npm run dev. So if I'm just sitting here and oh, I have to say, I can send to my prod one and it'll still show up here. So Austin at voltage tipper.vercel.app. Oh, it's not Austin, it's plebdev. Yeah, let's just send one. Let's see if our poll picks it up within 5 seconds. Oh, look at that. Cool. Okay, so it works. And there's no errors. It's good to see. Awesome. Okay, great. Add everything. Add polling for past tips. Sweet. Yeah, so definitely be careful with polling. Well, with polling in general, but with voltage as well. If you use your voltage node a lot, then eventually like too many requests, I think, can start to affect your billing. So that's just one thing to look out for. But I mean, you know, only polling when a user is on the page, like, you know, one request every 5 seconds or every 2 seconds when they're waiting to pay their invoice. So it's really not that bad, but that is something that can definitely get out of hand. But cool, we got everything spun up here. I guess the one last thing I did want to do that we didn't get to is on chain. Like, it would be cool if, 10 sats, submit. It'd be cool, like, if on this, there's almost like a tab maybe at the top where it's defaults to Lightning and then you can switch over to on chain. So I think that would be a cool thing to add. I mean, if you want to pay me on chain, like, I want to give you the option, that type of deal. And we can actually use the LND API for this still. Yeah, we need like address, new address right here. That's all it is. We just have to call get to new address. And we
50
could
million sats minimum on chain.
50 million sats minimum on chain.
Yes.
You can't actually. Oh, well, that's true. That's true. I could do that. I could like gray it out.
I don't
Gray it out.
know. Yeah, no, you're right. You can't really do that. But
But it's like, I mean, you're paying, like, the sender's paying the fee, so I kind of don't care. Like, if you send me a Dust UTXO,
if it's less than 50 million on the back end, no, wait, that doesn't work either. Dang. I don't know. You can't reject it.
yeah.
Enjoy consolidating.
Yeah, I mean, like, at least not on this Lightning node, but like my other Lightning node, I already kind of have Dust UTXOs. Those are probably the only Dust UTXOs I have. It's
Did
like,
you look at the on-chain stuff right now? The mempool right now?
no,
Like all day today? It's been at like 500. And
no.
it's not because of ordinals.
Wow, that's pretty bad.
Uh,
What is it?
OKX is consolidating and then they're like overbidding themselves.
Whoa.
Like they started out at 50 sats per VByte, and I guess
Oh.
whatever script they're running, they have it like trying to like one up their previous broadcast.
Wait, what is that called when like two trading bots like
Yeah,
end up
yeah.
in a loop
Only
where they're
it's the
trading?
same one. It's like you're boxing yourself.
Yeah.
So that's the theory right now, is that they're all consolidation transactions, but for some reason they're like out trying to outbid themselves. It doesn't make any sense.
Dang. That's kind of crazy that one company can still just ruin the mempool for a day.
Yeah. Well, at least our chain state size is going to shrink, so that'll be nice.
Yeah, that's
Everyone
true.
running a prune node will appreciate that.
Yeah, I took a picture earlier of like we have like Bitfeed up, which kind of like shows you this, like the block template. And it was just so ugly. Like it was just a bunch of these big block transactions and it was like breaking the UI.
Gee.
Yeah, that's classic. Well, man, everything just worked this time.
Yeah, I was kind of trying to keep tabs on it. I had so much support stuff and other stuff I was working on.
No, that's all cool. Got to
But
focus without your voice in my head.
yeah.
But yeah, it's
That
pretty
was
nice.
cool.
It's still a pretty small project here. We got Lightning address, we got LNURL, we got the past tips in
So you
order.
connected LNURL to a domain, like and everything in this one?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. So let's do a quick recap.
Yeah, please.
All of this happens in the API. So this is what's really cool about Vercel is Vercel gives you a free API deployment because they use serverless functions. Serverless functions, they're just normally when you deploy an API, it's a server. It's always online. It's always listening. But with serverless functions, with Vercel, they only come online once they receive a request. Which for a lot of stuff, that's kind of all you need is like just come online when I need you. And because of that, Vercel lets us deploy an API for free. So if we have an API and we have a Lightning node and we have Vercel, which, oh wow, balloons. And we have Vercel, which lets us easily, like, I can go into settings, I can go in domains here. I can easily add my own custom domain. So with the combination of those things, we basically just need to set aside a special endpoint. Like right here, I have ln urlp at slug. This slug is just a placeholder for a name. And we can essentially return our ln url pay callback, and then we have this callback endpoint right here. And the callback is just like, send me a query parameter with mount, and I will do some gross stuff with the description hash. Forget about that. And then we will simply just call our voltage node and ask for a new invoice of this value. The description hash, this is just the verification step that you need to do in LNURL. And we return it like so. Yeah, and then Next.js, they also let you rewrite where an API endpoint is. So we're essentially rewriting our lnurlp slug to .well-known lnurlp slug. And then here, we get info for our node, and we make sure that the slug being requested is the alias of our node. So therefore, when you deploy this, it will kind of auto-assign your alias to as the name, and then it's just at voltage tipper. And so you can hit that, and it is valid. 1 sat, and then we have polling on this now, so that 1 sat, yep, shows up right there. Ah, it's so cool.
I think it would be really cool to have like this, I don't know, program, whatever. This just like what I always wanted is to have my own LNURL, but I don't quite have the chops that you do on this. But I have enough like Linux admin experience to just like run something that'll connect to my domain and like in my node, and off I go. Like that would be super cool.
Yeah. Well, hopefully with this, like, it will be all that kind of stuff you want in one. I mean, maybe you don't even personally want a tipping page, but you could still have like the lightning address that comes with it.
Sure.
And you should only need to put in like these environment variables essentially.
Got you.
Yeah, so that's what I need to work on next is like one click deploy Vercel. Yeah, there's like a way that you can embed the button on the actual Git repo. And so then someone who's not technical, really, they just have to click the button. They have to put in a few variables, and then they're just on like their own kind of version of this Vercel project. And from there, you're just dealing with a UI, right? Like you don't need to write any new code.
Right.
So that's the final goal. Maybe that's where we can get to next week is like finalize, clean up everything, and then make it to where you can sort of one-click deploy it as a pleb and just like give us your invoice macaroon and your host and whatever name you want, and there you go.
Yeah, we could do that. Yeah, we could do a bunch of stuff. But yeah, man, thanks for the overview for sure.
Yeah, sweet. Fun to do some more building on a Friday.
Yeah. Yep. I guess you want to call it there?
Yeah.
All right. Well, this will be on YouTube. It was on Twitter. It was on Zapstream. It was on everything. So we will be sharing it around.
Yep. Cheers.
Later.